Are you a conscious leader or a visionary or a thought leader in this world? And would you like to create some of your own content in collaboration with us? If so, please head over to theatlasofconsciousness.com to check out more of our video and production content. We would love to work with you to get more of these new Earth messages out into the world. Thank you once again for listening. And now, on to the episode. I've kept focused to my values, and I believed in a vision beyond the world that I saw. A vision where I get to live in my values and work in my values. And this is kind of what I would say is the first port of call for a new prosperous planet and a prosperous ecosystem. This is the Atlas Emotion Series, where we share edge of the earth ideas for a new world. Hello, and welcome to another Atlas Emotion Series podcast. My name is Ella. So today I have a really cool episode for you. It's called Prosperity. Let me start by talking about where this podcast arrived from. Last year, I was experiencing a financially very difficult year, and I would go up into the trees basically and meditate for 2 hours on this idea of a planet of prosperity. I would see the earth and I would see these networks of kind of golden and warm light traveling through the planet and basically enriching all of us. I saw this vision of this network of prosperity. And the really incredible thing is this planet that I once envisioned last year, when it didn't feel very possible for me, was a planet that I largely now live in and have received. Now I find myself not really worrying about my own prosperity, because so much of what I live is that. I found myself having those routine worries about money. And then 10 minutes later, a friend of mine called up and basically resolved that and said that I was eligible for a grant that would just keep me financially stable. I've had a dream since I was a kid that no one believed in and everyone said would not happen, to get my bird up in the sky and flying. In meditation, what came to me was this image of a flight sanctuary. And then my old housemate sent me this flight sanctuary that felt like the realization of this dream that I've always had, which I even barely believed in. To me, that was also prosperity. And then I also got called up to do consulting work, which felt like a dream. It felt like an answer to doing something fresh and new with my filmmaking expertise. And I was messaging the people that I was going to work for. I didn't even tell them where I lived and where I was based. But we just happened to be messaging this one day. We were talking about meeting up for the very first time, and they said they were going to a meeting in the area. And I said, I live right there, we should meet. So there was that synchronicity and that serendipity there of, even though they had no idea that I lived there, on the one day that we were connecting with each other, it just worked out perfectly. So I'm just giving you some examples of what prosperity has manifested as, or what it feels like to me. This is that visceral feeling of that vision I had last year of a network of connections and a planet that's so rich in this network that it's so easy for us to connect with those that we desire to connect with, and to connect with new work or the finances that we need to give ourselves financial stability. So like I said, I have not always lived this way. When this podcast came to me, I was living in the feeling of financial poverty. I basically obsessed over my finances, and I was so frightened all the time of not having enough money to pay rent, not having enough money to pay for my projects. I've watched as my perspective has totally changed. And I'm watching myself, and have done for quite a while, say, well, the universe knows what it's doing. I'm sure it has something sorted for me. which is a form of surrender. And then because I'm able to say that to myself, I've watched as, I've gone from someone so worried to just relaxed about it. And so then I'm receiving this prosperity planet I once dreamed of. So today I'm going to be talking about prosperity. And there's a bunch of topics that I want to touch upon. I'm going to talk about requited love and the ecosystem, which connects back to time travel. I'm going to talk about the importance of our alignment to our values, the importance of our alignment to our energetic direction, and what we're really exchanging in our emotional currency, whether that's judgment or guilt or self-love, because that's actually where the wealth comes from. It comes from what we're exchanging emotionally, even though we may and we have been raised to believe it's all about the money. Well, it's actually underneath that all about the emotions. And how do we make ourselves rich? Well, it's all about enriching those perspectives of wealth and then witnessing as the ecosystem of relationships, which is that energetic ecosystem, enriches and becomes wealthy as a result of our own perspectives of wealth within. So I gave you in the last podcast some examples of how to time travel beyond a world of loneliness. But let me tell you that it totally works for your desire to be prosperous. Those meditations and those healings of support and visualization ultimately do lead to a planet of prosperity. I watched myself transform the way that I thought from, I love you, but you don't love me back, to you love me too. I mean, as much as we're saying that to our lovers, that's what we're saying to the universe. And so I came to focus on and transform those beliefs I had that I was giving all this love out and it wasn't being received, to moving into a place and breathing from a place of self-appreciation, as if it were from my belly. That was the prosperity rising. The last job that I got to do, which I brought up in the first podcast, Time Travel, where I said that I met with the Music Academy director after booking one piano lesson, and we made an ad together, was such an example of requited love in the ecosystem. It was a reflection of the requited love I had conjured and created within myself and that belonging that I had arrived at. This is all the reflection and the manifestation of me getting really, really clear on my values. So, prosperity and values. This is the other really important part of bringing forward that planet of prosperity. So we all know that we have lived in a challenging planet where compromise is king. But what if we really put in the tenderness and care to care about, in fact, what our values are, which is what I've spent years on, to be honest. I became really clear on my values and my priorities, what I cared about in my work, which was to work with spectacular people, aligned projects that arrived easily. I've kept focused to my values. I've done that healing that I mentioned in time travel, and I believed in a vision beyond the world that I saw. A vision where I get to live in my values and work in my values. And this is kind of what I would say is the first port of call for a new prosperous planet and a prosperous ecosystem. It's that all of us are uncompromising in our values and we stay focused on them. And we make it a daily ritual of aligning to our values and what we really care about. Because the mirror of the outside world changes as you align and you focus upon your values. It's our beliefs and our emotions that creates the ecosystem that surrounds us. So it really matters where our focus is held and to create space for that, because it reflects in the ecosystem of relationships that is around us. Holding that feeling, conjuring that feeling that we are respected in the values that we have to create projects or clients that really align to who we are. And when we are there in ourselves, aligned to our values and unwavering in our values, well, the ecosystem reflects it back to us. Let me talk a little bit about energetic direction. What we're focused on here is an energetic direction toward freedom, to understand that that direction toward freedom is our leadership. I have been questioned so many times. I can't even express how many times my vision has been questioned, and it's made me question myself. But when I have taken myself away and I've meditated for, hours on this prosperous planet, on my heart and what my heart wants, I've given my heart that opportunity to truly flourish and make it the voice that calls back to me. So I realized that my only job was to have faith that it was all working out for me. Last year, when I was in a really hard situation, and I basically had nothing, I think, to go off of except for these daily meditations I would do. It was all very insular, and I didn't feel like I had much evidence for the internal work I was doing. I saw how despondent my heart was inside of me, and I sang to it. In one meditation, I sang kind of for 30 minutes, just singing I love you to my heart, to allow myself to fully align with it and to know that it's heard and to know that it's important. It's the most important thing. I think that a lot of what I learned over the years was to quell it and to squash it. But as I have said, no, you're the most important thing, and what you believe in is the most important thing. That's rippled out and created a whole new planet Earth that is way more enjoyable to live on than the one that I came from. Soon after that, I wrote down that I needed help in the Atlas. And I had someone contact me who was willing to help for free, which blew me away. Because again, it was another example of a world that I didn't think existed, where the prosperity that I had in my heart, or that I chose, of a planet that was unwaveringly aligned to its values and supportive and loving, was available. So another point about this planet of prosperity, we're all exchanging emotional currency. So we're pretty used to believing that we're all exchanging financial currency, which we are, but underneath of that, we are exchanging an emotional currency. We're exchanging the currency of judgment or guilt, or we could be exchanging the currency of prosperity, self-love, and belonging. So are you exchanging guilt, or are you exchanging belonging? I've absolutely gone on a hard journey where I've recognized the judgments and the lack of belonging and that guilt that I was being exchanged. I was exchanging how poverty-stricken I was instead of exchanging what we all have access to, which is self-love and belonging. Even if it takes a little hard work to arrive there, that is the wealth that we all have within ourselves. So I started to ask myself, am I empowered to change? Am I inspired by possibility, or am I caged by the feeling of unworthiness? And the reason I mention these things is because this was the critical key. This was the true money, basically. It was my unwavering desire to feel worthy, empowered to change, and aligned to those values that I get to live in a world that's actually very prosperous, beautiful, and where everyone cares about each other. And over the years, the more that I invested in my true wealth of self-love inside of me, I watched my working relationships shift, become more and more positive. My neediness released, new people came into my life who loved me just as I was. And then I had easeful working relationships arrive at my door, and then an easeful financial situation, which wasn't even, we all believe that the money has to come from the work we do, but I actually had it and still have it come from it's coming from a totally different place, which is supporting me to have that base level of income that I need to pay for my rent and everything that I need to pay for. So even releasing where it needed to come from, which we've heard so many times on our spiritual journey, but it's really cool to see the manifestation of that, I just know that I'm supported financially, and then it just comes from wherever it comes from, and I'm not attached that I need to work in exchange for money. what's been really cool about that is that now when I work, it's just so enriching, I don't have to work for the sake of working. I work because I care about the stories and telling amazing stories and enriching stories. Very, very cool. And as a result, the people that I'm working with now are just mind-blowing. It's really cool. So the other thing that I focused upon to bring forward this planet of prosperity and this ecosystem of wealthy relationships and wealth inside of me were these ideas of being surrounded by a wealth of perspectives and a wealth of perspectives within. Instead of constantly saying to myself, which I did all of last year, how poor I was and how I didn't have enough money to do the things that I wanted to do, I started saying to myself repeatedly and daily, even when I didn't believe it, I know who I am and I hold on to that frequency. And I aligned to my heart and my body with true love. I allowed my inner self to be filled by perspectives of wealth that were how much love I had and how much support I had and how much belonging there was and how much prosperity there was inside of me, which I really feel, that freedom in my body and that prosperity in my body. And that's rippled out and it's just come right back and it's changed the place that I live in. So carrying on from what I've said, I want to talk a little bit about the ecosystem of relationships. How is your process of healing reflecting back to you? I have come to focus on and understand where I created separation by placing judgment on the outside world, instead of simply being aware of my boundaries and sending love. I came to understand that the outside world of relationships is just a neutral mirror. And I was looking at parts of me that were exchanging judgment or guilt. But as I've allowed myself to exchange more of that belonging, I've arrived at parties where everyone that I met had an open heart. They invited me to live shows and to open mic nights, which I had been thinking about for a while. And then I had a gardener arrive, and he basically was into music as well. And then he sent out an invitation for me to perform a set at a local cafe. And he was just at my doorstep to just help me with the gardening. The way that it all is arriving. It's when I least expect it. And I know that it's because of that exchange of love and belonging. So that was today's podcast, all about prosperity and the ecosystem that surrounds us. Prosperity is a vision that we all hold inside of ourselves. It's a planet of Earth that far exceeds the one that we've seen. It's a vision that we can all hold. That planet of a network, an ecosystem of love, just that blows us away and arrives at our doorstep easily. I'm going to just leave you with this kind of interesting thing that my healer, one of the healers that I work with, has on her land. They have a farm and she has this post. It shares a positive frequency for the land. Every day it talks to the land saying that it is healed and it is supported and it is enlivened and enriched and it has the power to heal itself. So that's kind of what I want to say about how to cultivate a prosperity in your own life. It's sending out a loving heart to the most damaged places in our relationship ecosystem, the places of judgment and non-belonging, and that allows our own lives to flourish. Knowing that we are strong and worthy in all of our relationships. And just repeating that, I am strong and worthy in all of my relationships. And you will find that the universe is listening to exactly what you desire, exactly what you value in your own exchanges of prosperity, and can give you exactly that and more. It can give you the life that you desired in your heart and that planet of Earth that blows us all away with its beauty. So thank you for joining me on this episode, which has been a long time coming actually. I had prosperity as a name for a podcast come to me before I felt it in any way, shape, or form. And I waited until I knew that I felt it and I could share how much my life has changed and grown. I'm grateful to this podcast, and I'm grateful that I've held on to that feeling. But I think that's what's cool. I'm sharing with you guys that feeling of a prosperous earth, it's very real. And it's just about continually feeding it and continually exchanging that emotional currency of value and belonging. Can't wait to join you on the next episode, which will be all about gravity.